what's up? This is Emma from Beanbag Books, and it has been a really long time since I did this. Given that I am admittedly quite rusty at making these things, and I have actually read so many books recently that it's going to be pretty much impossible to talk about all of them in a single video, I decided to just stick to what I've read this month, which is Women in Translation Month, as you absolutely should already know, but it's okay if you didn't. We welcome new readers to the translation world always. So I'm going to talk about the 4 or so books that I read this month that were all by women in translation, all from different languages, while I am painting my nails. I was just feeling kind of purple today, what can I say? I'm gonna paint my nails purple while we talk about some purple prose. Woohoo! I hope that was a good joke. So the first thing I read, what was the first thing? Oh yeah, the first thing I read this month was Hiromi Kawakami's Strange Weather in Tokyo. And that was translated by Allison, Markin, Powell from Japanese. So I had read a book by Hiromi Kawakami before. I haven't talked about it on the channel because it was during that weird gulf of time when I wasn't making videos this year. But I did read that book a few months ago and I quite liked it. It was called People in My Neighborhood. And that was why I really wanted to pick this one up for my first Women in Translation Month book. And I am sorry to say, I think I liked it the least of all the books I read this month. So I knew going into this that it was going to be a little bit odd. It is kind of a May-December relationship between a woman in her 30s and her teacher from high school who is now retired. He's probably in his like 50s or 60s. I'm not really sure. And she calls him Sensei the entire book because she can't actually remember his name. So through the course of the book, these two hang out together and do stuff. Kind of coupley-ish. That's not a word, I'm sorry. And pretty much the whole time, she is wanting them to be something more, and he is kind of pushing back on that, and he's kind of like, oh no, we're just hanging out, like we're just real good buds, but they're doing like couple stuff all the time. And so, you know, I can respect like the weird situationship thing. Like I've been there, not like this, but I've been there. The weird thing about this book was that I really felt like it was leading us to this natural conclusion. Check it out, almost 2 nails done. And for 80% of the book seemed to be heading towards a specific conclusion. I'll try not to spoil it, but that's what I thought was going to happen. And then the opposite thing happens with no foreshadowing or real meaning to it. And so I was just kind of confused by it. I was like, wait a minute, why did you spend this whole book building to this resolution that isn't going to happen? I was just very confused. It was trying to get you to view this relationship in a different way that I wasn't sure if I was really into. So that was frustrating. I gave the book 2.5 stars for that reason. But I do really enjoy Hiromi Kawakami's writing. She kind of has this like 500 Days of Summer-ish kind of quirky, fun sort of tone to her, but with always like undercurrents of saying something else. Although I think that her previous book was a little bit more Alice in Wonderland-ish. But anyway, like her. As for the translation by Allison, Markin, Powell, so I understand why for this particular book they probably really wanted to have a woman translate it. But I kind of felt that the previous translator, who I think was Ted Goosen in People from My Neighborhood, I liked his translation better. I thought it captured what I imagined to be her style a bit better, and so I don't know. I wonder if he might have been a better choice for this, or maybe just a different woman translator. It wasn't bad. I just thought he did a better job. Now, the second book that I finished this month, and I want you to know there were a lot of DNFs between Strange Weather in Tokyo and this book. But the second book I ended up finishing was The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barbery, I think is how you pronounce it. And it was translated by Alison Anderson, another Allison. I also listened to the audiobook of this. It was read by, hang on a second, I gotta get the narrators' names because there were 2 of them. Barbara Rosenblatt and Cassandra Morris. I thought they were both really good, but that's not really what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is I discovered something this month, and that was partially why I DNF so many books. I discovered that I do not like translated books on audio very often. I really want to, because I like to have an audiobook going pretty much all the time, and given I wanted to read all translated books this month, that's what I decided to do. But I kept quitting on all of these translated audiobooks, and I couldn't figure out why, because it wasn't necessarily that I didn't like the story or that the writing wasn't engaging me. I thought it was a problem with the narrators, but I tried one with a narrator that I did like, but for some reason the story wasn't working for me. I don't know, just some combination of like translated and audiobook just isn't working for me. I was talking to a friend about this who also is like a translator. She was in my grad program with me, and she said, I wonder if no matter how good the translation is, if there is just going to be a little bit of awkwardness heard orally due to it being in a different language originally that you wouldn't necessarily pick up on if it were just in print. And maybe that has something to do with it, that I'm sort of hearing that translationese kind of, or it could just be that translated books don't tend to sell as well, and therefore they don't tend to have the more well-known narrators, or, you know, the more skilled narrators, and as a result, the end product is just a little bit off. I don't know. I was fortunate that I really liked this audiobook and that I continued, because I did like this book, and I'm going to tell you about it now. I gave this book 3.5 stars, so I did not love it, but I really enjoyed it. And I think that this is a book that a lot of people aren't going to like, and a lot of people are really going to like, and a lot of people are going to call this book pretentious. And I understand why they might do that, because in order to enjoy this book, you have to really like lots of long, multi-syllabled SAT words. You have to enjoy long philosophical musings on the part of the characters, and you also have to believe that a 12-year-old is responsible for the following sentence. Oh, the despicable vacuousness of bourgeoisie existence. I don't always like all that stuff, but in this book, it worked for me. There are two major characters in this book. One is Renee, who is, I think, the concierge at this luxury apartment in Paris. And then the other is Paloma, who's the 12-year-old I mentioned, who is someone living in the building with her very wealthy parents, who is very disillusioned with life. She's very intelligent, but she just doesn't see any point in growing up because all the grown-ups she knows are vapid and uninteresting and just have the life sucked out of them. And a little bit of a trigger warning for self-harm, she does intend to die by suicide later in the book for this reason. But she's going to do it on her 13th birthday, so she isn't going to do it yet. You get her journal entries sort of leading up to this point. And Renee, also, you get journal entries from her, and she is a concierge. She grew up lower class in Paris, never really rose to be very wealthy, but she's very intelligent and has a great interest in art and philosophy and literature, especially Russian literature. The book is about these two people who seem different on the outside, but actually have a lot in common, and the relationship that they eventually develop with each other and with a distinguished guest in the apartment buildings. So I think the thing I struggled with most in this book is the philosophical musings got a little bit too long. I would have preferred that the characters get a little bit more time together to be friends, because I sort of understood that that was what the book was going to be about, and it caught me off guard that that did not happen for a very long time. I also found Paloma to be a little bit much sometimes. I was eventually able to suspend disbelief and just be like, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to believe that this 12-year-old is actually, but she does say things like the sentence that I read aloud. But yeah, that kind of kept it from being a perfect book for me. But I did really enjoy the writing. I really fell in love with Renee's character, especially. I think that the added benefit of like life experience made her a little bit less insufferable than Paloma and made her really wry and funny. The writing is sometimes so elegant that it gets in its own way. But I mostly did enjoy it. It's very witty and very enjoyable to read. The translation was excellent. I honestly, I have a hard enough time believing that the author could produce all of those words from her own head in French, and Allison Anderson had to rewrite the whole thing in English and do the same thing. So honestly, hats off to Allison Anderson. We love you. We don't love that your name's not on the cover. This was printed by Europa Editions, and they never put translators' names on the covers, despite being one of the biggest publishers of translated literature in English, which sucks. And I don't quite know what to do about it, but I'm formulating a plan, guys, okay? After that, we had, I just finished it yesterday. What's it called? Oh, Shoko's Smile by Choi Eunyoung, I think. I did listen to a recording of her name, but I probably got it wrong. You can see it on the cover, which I'm going to put up over here. And these were short stories translated from Korean, translated by Sung Ryu. I am going to come back to Sung Ryu in a second because I think that her translating is excellent, and I've seen a lot of positive press for this book in English, but nobody really talks about the translation, and I'm going to get to that too. This is, like I said, a book of short stories about contemporary life in Korea, mostly focusing on young women and they're kind of their late 20s, early 30s, which I think is about the author's age. And I've seen this author compared to Sally Rooney a lot. I think that they're similar in some ways, but this author focuses more on relationships between families and friends. There are some stories that focus on romantic relationships. One of my favorites did this. It was called Hanji and Youngju. I think what makes some of these stories so memorable is just they have these really unique and specific settings. This story is set in an old monastery that has been converted into kind of like a Peace Corps like youth outreach program where teenagers and people in their 20s from all around the world will just come to this place to help out in the community. And Youngju is a Korean girl who comes here and has just broken up with her boyfriend, and she meets Hanji, who is from Nairobi, Kenya. One of the really great things about this writer is she can make characters memorable in 50 pages or less, which very few people can do, and that's why I think short story collections often don't have the same following that novels do in terms of fan fiction and stuff. But I remember a lot about these two characters, even from this 50-page section. I remember that Youngju had a lot of trouble communicating her feelings, and I also remember that Hanji had this energy of, really wanting to solve the problems of the world and just being really effusive, but he couldn't get himself very close to anybody, despite having this really outgoing seeming personality. I love that one because of the specificity of the setting and the characters. And another one that I love was the title story, Shoko's Smile. And I mostly loved it because it contains sort of an old, crusty, but very sweet on the inside grandpa character who's loyal and shows up to all the recitals and watches his granddaughter's movies that she makes, even though he doesn't understand it and he says he doesn't understand it. That's my favorite kind of character, is the crusty sweet grandpa. I didn't feel that all of these stories were at the same level. I felt that the quality dropped off a little bit at the end, and so I decided to give it 4 stars. But I really liked these portraits, these intimate portraits of family and relationships that she does, and now I'm going to get to Sung Ryu's translation. This translation, I really think, has very positively contributed to all of the hype around this book in English that I've seen so far. And I don't think that people are intending necessarily to neglect her. I'm going to touch up this nail really quickly. I don't think that people are intending to neglect the translator here. I just think that they don't really understand what a translator contributes to a book, and so they don't know how to talk about her. Her name is also much smaller on the cover. So here's an example of a paragraph in English that I think shows excellent translation skills. I don't speak Korean myself, but I do know what it's like to be a translator, and I know what she must have done. This is a sample from the grandpa character that I loved, that I'm sure was some kind of dialect of Korean originally, and this is how she rewrote it in English. I don't need that stuff, you drink it. You're always on about how busy you are, so I came to see for myself. And I wondered how you were getting on. Well, this place ain't much to look at. How would a girl meet a man if these are all the clothes she's got? I could feel just the Midwestern country grandpa who just got off his tractor, just permeating through that text, which I would love to know more if, you know, anybody's read this book in Korean about like what that dialect that it was translated from might have been like. That's a great example of how a translator can bring life to a text, because it would have been really easy, I think, to just translate that into relatively standard English without the slang, because you could be like, I don't know what to do with this, or to really literally translate what the Korean said, which would probably be really disjointed. But she chose this kind of folksy, like kind of countryish, not quite southern dialect really helped me imagine this character. So we love Sung Ryu, we love her adorable Korean Midwestern old man. So while I blow on my nails and check for empty spots, I only finished one more book so far this month. I actually finished it this morning, so I haven't done a write-up for it. I can't refer to it, but it was Hotel Silence by Audur Olafsdottir, I think. She's Icelandic. I read a book by her last year, and the translator is the same. It's translated by Brian Fitzgibbon. And this book is about a middle-aged man who has just really been dealt a lot of blows by life. His wife has left him after 20-some years of marriage, and she's also told him that his only daughter, the light of his life, is actually not his, and she was pregnant when she met him, and she just never told him. His mother has dementia, and he's really the only person caring for her at this point, and he is struggling to keep his head above water with his handyman job and taking care of his mother, and also, you know, navigating these relationships with his wife and his daughter, even though his daughter, and trigger warning again for suicidal ideation, he decides that he can't handle life anymore, and he's going to travel abroad, and he's going to find a way to die by suicide. And he chooses to travel to a country that is unnamed, that has just suffered a huge war that has only recently ended, and he stays at a hotel called Hotel Silence, and he becomes unofficially the hotel handyman. And after spending time with the people in the city where he is and making friends with some of them, learning about the war and learning about their suffering, it helps him put into perspective and understand better, like, the nature of his own suffering. I was not sure what to think of this book when I first started it. I thought it was a little bit slow moving. I really like the Olafsdottir's and also, I suppose, Brian Fitzgibbon's translation. The language here is very stark and descriptive and poetic, and I found that in Miss Iceland from last year too. But I think I can only give this book maybe 3.5 stars, even though I really warmed up to it by the end and I really came to appreciate all the characters. Less than half the book is spent at Hotel Silence, and it's a 150-page book, so we barely get to see so many of these people. And by the time the book ended, I was only just able to keep everybody straight. So I wish that we had gotten either a little bit less time in Iceland before we leave, or a little bit more at the end at Hotel Silence. Maybe the book just should have been longer. It was very short, but overall just really lovely, just the meditations on just the small, meaningful things in life. The protagonist keeps coming back to this moment when his daughter was born, looking at her like in his arms and thinking, she will outlive me. As I've already said in this video, I love kind of stoic, hardcore men who adore things or people or children. How did we do on the nails? Okay, it's okay. I think it does look better than the last time I did my nails on a video. I think I've gotten a little bit better at painting and talking at the same time. I'm gonna touch this up and hopefully upload this video soon, and maybe the next time I film a video will be on my nice new camera instead of my phone. As soon as I figure out how to get that to work. But thanks for watching, if in fact you did and you haven't just skipped to the end of this video. Bye.